The day I had dreamed about for years. The day I was supposed to be surrounded by love, laughter, and happiness, turned into the most painful moment of my life. The church was glowing with soft light. The flowers smelled sweet, and everyone was there to celebrate me and Daniel. I was glowing with excitement, walking down the aisle feeling like nothing could go wrong. But then it did. Right in the middle of the reception, when all eyes were on us, my mom stood up and said something that shattered the joy in an instant. Her voice was sharp, cold, and cutting through the music like a knife. "Martha, you're making a mockery of this family." The room fell silent. I froze. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother, in front of everyone, family, friends, even Daniel's relatives, insulting me on the most important day of my life. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them, filled with contempt, disappointment, and something deeper, resentment. I looked around, searching for support, but the shock kept everyone silent. For years, I had tried to earn my mom's approval, tried to be the daughter she wanted, but she always found ways to tear me down. And now, with a single sentence, she humiliated me in front of everyone I loved. My heart pounded and the heat of tears rose to my eyes, but something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let her ruin my day. Not anymore. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and faced her with a calm I didn't quite feel. "If this is how you see me, Mom, then maybe it's time I stop trying to please you." The room was still silent, but I saw the flicker of surprise in her eyes. I wasn't the little girl anymore who would shrink away and take her insults quietly. I was done being her victim. That moment was the turning point. The moment I decided I would fight back, not with anger, but with the truth and my own strength. I would not let my mother's bitterness define me or destroy the happiness I had fought so hard to build. And I knew, deep down, she would regret crossing this line. The silence that followed my words was deafening. All eyes in the room were locked on me and my mom, the air thick with tension. My mother's face went pale, her usual confident sneer replaced with a flicker of uncertainty. For years, I had been the quiet one, always trying to keep the peace, bending to her will to avoid conflict. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was reclaiming my dignity. As the initial shock settled, whispers started swirling around the guests. Some faces showed sympathy, others looked uncomfortable. My dad, sitting across the room, met my gaze with a nod that said, "I'm with you." It gave me strength. I looked back at my mom, whose eyes now burned with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You think you can just speak to me like that?" she snapped, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "I've sacrificed everything for this family. You owe me respect." I swallowed the lump in my throat but refused to back down. "Sacrifices don't give you the right to insult me, especially not on my wedding day," I said firmly. "Respect isn't demanded through cruelty. It's earned through kindness, and I'm done waiting for that from you." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "You always think you're so perfect, don't you? Trying to act like you're better than everyone else, while forgetting where you came from." I felt the heat rising in my chest. This wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about years of feeling invisible, unheard, and unloved by the woman who was supposed to be my biggest supporter. I had spent so long trying to fit into her mold, but I realized that no matter what I did, it was never enough. "I'm not perfect," I admitted, my voice softer but steady. "But I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of the life Daniel and I are building together, without your approval. Your words don't define me anymore." The room was completely silent now. Even my mother's closest allies seemed to hesitate, caught off guard by my sudden strength. I could see the doubt flicker in their eyes as they witnessed a side of me they had never seen before, a side that wouldn't be silenced. Daniel stepped forward, taking my hand in his. "Martha, you've been amazing," he said quietly but firmly. "I'm proud of you. You stood up for yourself today, and that's the bravest thing I've ever seen." Hearing those words made the knot in my chest loosen slightly. For so long, I had doubted myself, questioned if I was overreacting or being too sensitive. But now, with Daniel's support and the silent witness of our family, I knew I was right to fight back. My mom's face twisted with frustration, but there was a flicker of something else. Regret. It was subtle, but it was there. The reality of her harsh words and the damage they caused was starting to sink in. That night, I learned that standing up to the people who hurt you isn't easy, but it's necessary. It's the only way to break free from the chains of toxic love and claim your own happiness. I didn't just fight back. I won back my self-respect. And as for my mom, that moment was the beginning of her regret. The days after the wedding were a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. On one hand, I felt lighter than I had in years, like a weight had been lifted off my chest the moment I stood up to my mom. But on the other hand, I knew things wouldn't be the same between us. The silence from her was louder than any argument we'd ever had. She didn't call or text. She didn't try to explain or apologize. Instead, she disappeared from my life, and it stung in a way I hadn't expected. At first, I questioned myself. Had I been too harsh? Was I wrong to call her out in front of everyone? But every time those doubts crept in, I reminded myself why I had done it. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of her insults, letting her bitterness define me. My wedding day was my moment, and I deserved to enjoy it without feeling crushed by her coldness. Daniel was my rock through it all. He stood by me, held my hand when the tears came, and reminded me that I was strong, stronger than I ever believed. He told me the truth I had been avoiding. "Martha, you did what you needed to do. No one gets to treat you that way, especially not your own mother." His words became my armor against the guilt and the sadness. But while Daniel's support was unwavering, the family wasn't so simple. My mom's silence sent ripples through everyone. Some relatives reached out with hesitant condolences, while others quietly took her side. The tension grew thick at family gatherings, making them feel more like battlegrounds than celebrations. I could feel eyes on me, judging, questioning if I had overstepped or caused a scandal. One afternoon, a week after the wedding, I got a call from my aunt. She was gentle but firm. "Martha, your mom's really hurting. She hasn't been herself. I think she's starting to realize what she lost." Her words surprised me. For so long, I thought my mom was cold and unfeeling, but hearing that she was hurting made me pause. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for things to change. Still, I wasn't ready to reach out. I needed time to heal, to rebuild my confidence without waiting for her approval. The damage ran deep, and while regret might be growing in her heart, it didn't erase the years of pain I'd endured. Then came a message from my mom, out of the blue. It was short and unexpected. "Martha, I'm sorry for what I said at your wedding. I was wrong. I hope we can find a way forward." My heart raced. I read and reread the message, trying to read between the lines. Was this the start of her regret turning into something real? Or was it just a fleeting moment of guilt? I decided not to reply immediately. I wanted to be sure that her words meant more than just an apology sent out of obligation. I wanted to see change, not just hear it. Days passed, and slowly, I started noticing small gestures. A text asking how I was doing, a card sent to the house, a quiet presence at a family event without any cold remarks. Each gesture was tentative, but it showed she was trying. One evening, we finally sat down to talk. It wasn't easy. We both had tears, frustrations, and years of hurt to unpack. But beneath the pain, there was a flicker of hope, a recognition that we both wanted something better. It wasn't the end of our struggles. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I wasn't just the daughter fighting for approval. I was a woman standing up for herself, demanding respect, and slowly learning to forgive. My mom's regret wasn't just about words. It was about the hard work of healing. And in that, we both found a fragile but real path forward. The conversation with my mom was long overdue. Months of silence, avoidance, and heavy tension had built up between us. And finally, there we were, face to face, trying to untangle years of pain and misunderstanding. I still remember sitting across from her at the kitchen table, the room feeling too small for all the emotions packed inside. Her eyes looked tired, regretful, and vulnerable, something I hadn't seen in a long time. For once, she wasn't the cold, distant woman who had insulted me at my wedding. She was just a mother who had made mistakes, and maybe, just maybe, wanted to make things right. "I'm sorry, Martha," she began quietly, her voice cracking. "For what I said at your wedding, and for all the times I made you feel like you weren't enough. I was wrong. I see that now. I was so focused on what I thought was best that I forgot what mattered most. You." Her words hit me harder than I expected. All those years of feeling rejected, judged, and unloved, hearing her admit it out loud was like a wave crashing over me. But at the same time, I wasn't ready to forgive so easily. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process, a journey. "I appreciate you saying that, Mom," I replied. I replied carefully, "But words aren't enough. It's going to take time for me to heal. I need to know you mean it, and that you're willing to change." She nodded slowly. "I am. I don't want to lose you. I want us to have a relationship where you feel supported and loved, not hurt and belittled." We talked for hours about the past, about the hurt, about the expectations we both carried. For the first time, we listened to each other without anger or interruption. It was painful, raw, but honest. I told her how her words on my wedding day had cut deeper than she probably realized, how I had spent so much of my life trying to be the daughter she wanted, but it was never enough. She listened, sometimes with tears, sometimes with silence, but she listened. And then she shared her own struggles, how she felt lost after her own mother passed, how she had carried fears and insecurities that made her act harshly, how she never learned to express love in a healthy way. That moment was a turning point, not just for our relationship, but for both of us. We began to see each other as flawed human beings, not just mother and daughter locked in conflict. After that night, things didn't magically fix themselves. There were still difficult days, awkward silences, and moments of doubt. But there was also progress, small gestures of kindness, more honest conversations, and a willingness to try. I realized forgiveness was not about forgetting the past, but about choosing to move forward despite it. It was about releasing the anger that had held me captive and allowing space for healing. Over time, my mom started showing up differently in my life. She sent thoughtful messages, made efforts to celebrate my achievements without jealousy, and even apologized for moments she still struggled with. I responded with cautious optimism, knowing trust had to be rebuilt step by step. Daniel noticed the change too. He said he saw a lighter side of both of us. Less tension, more genuine smiles. It felt like we were finally reclaiming what had been lost. Our family gatherings became less stressful, filled more with laughter than with silent resentment. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I learned that standing up to someone you love doesn't mean you want to destroy them. Sometimes it means demanding respect and honesty so that love can grow stronger. My mom's regret wasn't just a moment of sorrow, it was the beginning of a journey toward redemption. And I was ready to walk that path with her, one day at a time. Even though things started to improve between my mom and me, I quickly realized that healing a relationship like ours wasn't a straight path. It was messy, full of setbacks, moments of doubt, and emotional hurdles neither of us expected. The hard truth was that words alone weren't enough to undo years of pain and neglect. One afternoon, a few months after that intense conversation, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection that still carried scars of my mom's harsh words. I had come a long way, but some wounds ran deep. I wondered if my mom truly understood the impact of her cruelty, not just at the wedding, but throughout my entire life. That day, I decided to be honest with her again. I sent her a message, something I had avoided for too long. Mom, I want to keep working on us, but I need you to know that some things still hurt. I need you to understand me better. Her reply came quickly. I want to understand, Martha. Help me. That message opened a new door between us. It was the beginning of deeper conversations, not the surface level apologies or the fleeting attempts to smooth things over, but real talks about our feelings, fears, and expectations. We started setting boundaries for our relationship. I told her what I needed: respect, kindness, and support. She shared her struggles with expressing love and the pressure she felt to be perfect as a mother. These conversations weren't easy. Sometimes they ended in tears or frustration. Other times they brought us closer in ways we hadn't thought possible. One breakthrough moment came when she asked me to help her understand how her words affected me. I told her about the nights I cried alone, wondering why the woman who gave me life seemed to want to break me down instead of build me up. I talked about the loneliness of feeling unloved by the person who was supposed to love me most. Listening to me, she finally began to grasp the depth of the pain she'd caused. Her eyes filled with tears, and she said, "I'm so sorry, Martha. I never realized how much I hurt you." For the first time, it felt like we were really connecting, not as mother and daughter caught in a cycle of pain, but as two flawed people trying to heal together. Still, I knew healing wasn't a one-time fix. There were days when old wounds reopened, when her words slipped out in moments of frustration. But now, instead of retreating or breaking down, we talked about it. We acknowledged the mistakes and committed to doing better. Daniel noticed the difference too. He told me he was proud of the way I handled everything, not just the confrontation, but the ongoing work to mend a broken relationship. His support was unwavering, reminding me that I didn't have to carry this burden alone. One evening, at another family gathering, my mom pulled me aside. She hugged me tightly, something she rarely did before, and whispered, "Thank you for fighting for us." Those words felt like a balm on my heart. I realized that fighting back that day at the wedding wasn't about destroying my mom. It was about saving the relationship by demanding the love and respect I deserved. Our journey wasn't perfect, and it still wasn't easy. But it was real, and that made all the difference. Standing up to her that day gave me the courage not only to fight for myself, but to fight for the family I wanted. A family where love wasn't conditional, where respect was mutual, and where healing was possible. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it truly was. After that heartfelt conversation, I realized that rebuilding our relationship was going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Healing takes time, patience, and more than a few uncomfortable talks. But I was ready to do the work because deep down I wanted my mom back. Not the woman who tore me down, but the mother I hoped she could be. One of the hardest parts was learning how to set boundaries. For so long, I had let her words and actions control how I felt about myself. Every insult, every cutting remark chipped away at my confidence. I realized that if I wanted to heal, I had to protect myself emotionally, so I started being honest about what I would and wouldn't accept. At first, it felt awkward. Telling my mom when she crossed the line or hurt me with her words was like walking on thin ice. There were moments when she pushed back, telling me I was being too sensitive or disrespectful. But I stayed firm. I reminded myself that respect was a two-way street. I deserved to be treated with kindness and love, especially by my own mother. Slowly, things began to shift. My mom started to recognize when she was hurting me, and she tried to stop herself before saying something cruel. It wasn't perfect. There were still times when old habits crept in, but the fact that she was trying meant a lot. It meant she was willing to change. I also learned the importance of forgiveness, not just forgiving her, but forgiving myself. I had carried so much guilt over the years, wondering if I had somehow caused the distance between us. I blamed myself for not being the perfect daughter she wanted. But as I opened up to a therapist, I began to understand that her pain and anger weren't my fault. They were hers. And I had the power to let go of that guilt and focus on my own happiness. Therapy was a turning point. It gave me the tools to cope with my feelings and helped me see the situation with clearer eyes. I started to build my self-esteem and realized that my worth wasn't tied to my mom's approval. I was learning to love myself on my own terms, and that was empowering. As my relationship with my mom slowly improved, I noticed changes in how I interacted with others too. I became more confident, more assertive, and more willing to stand up for myself in every area of life. I was no longer living in the shadow of someone else's judgment. I was stepping into my own light. One of the most beautiful moments came when my mom and I went on a trip together, just the two of us. It was the first time in years we had spent quality time without the tension or resentment clouding every conversation. We talked about everything: our fears, regrets, dreams, and hopes for the future. On that trip, I saw a different side of her, a vulnerable, caring woman who had made mistakes but wanted to do better. We laughed, cried, and shared stories. It was like rediscovering a relationship I thought was lost forever. That doesn't mean everything was perfect after that. We still had disagreements and moments of frustration, but we had learned how to communicate with respect. We had built a foundation of honesty and understanding that gave us hope. Through all this, Daniel was my anchor. He never judged me for the struggles I faced with my mom. Instead, he offered unconditional support and reminded me daily that I deserved happiness and peace. His love strengthened my resolve and gave me the courage to keep moving forward. Looking back now, I realize that the insult at my wedding was a painful but necessary catalyst. It forced me to confront the toxic patterns in our relationship and, more importantly, to fight for myself. I learned that standing up to someone you love doesn't mean you hate them. It means you love yourself enough to demand respect. My mom's regret wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was the beginning of real change. It took time, but through patience and perseverance, we began to heal. Our journey wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Today, I'm proud to say that my mom and I have a relationship that, while imperfect, is filled with more love and respect than ever before. I no longer live in fear of her judgment or anger. I have found my voice, and with it, I have found freedom. And I want anyone watching this who might be struggling with toxic family relationships to know this. You deserve respect. You deserve to be heard. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is fight back. Not to break someone down, but to build yourself up. Even though my mom and I had made progress, I soon realized that healing a relationship like ours wasn't a straight path. There were days when everything felt hopeful, and other days when old wounds reopened, making me question whether we could really move forward. One afternoon, about 6 months after the wedding, I found myself sitting alone on the porch, the warm sunlight streaming over me. I was scrolling through old photos on my phone, pictures of me and my mom when I was a kid, smiling and carefree. It was hard to believe that the woman in those photos was the same one who had hurt me so deeply. I realized that despite everything, part of me still wanted that little girl back, the one who believed her mom loved her unconditionally. But I also knew that person didn't exist anymore. The relationship we had now was different, complicated by years of misunderstanding and pain. That day, I made a decision. I was going to stop hoping for my mom to be someone she wasn't. Instead, I was going to focus on what I needed. I needed peace, respect, and a sense of self-worth that wasn't tied to her approval. It wasn't easy to draw that line, especially when family gatherings would sometimes bring the tension back like a wave. My mom would make offhand remarks, small jabs that reminded me how fragile our progress was. I learned to take a step back, to breathe, and to respond with calm instead of anger. That self-control became my shield. At the same time, I didn't want to cut her out completely. I wanted to believe that love could still exist between us. Flawed, messy, but real. I realized that love doesn't mean tolerating hurt. It means setting boundaries and choosing when and how to engage. One of the biggest breakthroughs came when my mom surprised me with a letter. It was handwritten, something she had never done before. In it, she poured out her feelings, her regrets, her fears, and her hopes for our future. She admitted how much she had hurt me and how deeply she regretted the pain her words had caused. Reading that letter brought tears to my eyes. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. It showed me that she was willing to be vulnerable, to face her mistakes, and to try. I wrote back, thanking her for the letter and expressing my own feelings. I told her it was going to take time, that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. But I also said I was willing to walk that path with her, as long as she was willing to meet me halfway. Our relationship slowly transformed from fragile truce to cautious friendship. We still had disagreements and moments of frustration, but those moments became opportunities to grow instead of reasons to fight. Daniel noticed the change too. He often reminded me how proud he was of the courage it took to stand up for myself and then to open my heart again. His support was a constant reminder that I wasn't alone in this. One evening, during a quiet dinner at home, my mom and I shared a laugh. A real laugh, not forced or nervous. It felt like a glimpse of what our relationship could be. We talked about simple things, memories from my childhood, plans for the future, and hopes for a family where everyone felt valued. In that moment, I realized how far we had come. The wounds from the past hadn't disappeared, but the way we chose to heal them made all the difference. I also learned that healing isn't about perfection. It's about acceptance, accepting each other's flaws and mistakes, and choosing love over resentment. To anyone watching this who's struggling with toxic family relationships, I want you to know this. You have the right to stand up for yourself. You deserve respect and kindness, no matter who it comes from. And sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful healing. My mom's insult on my wedding day was a turning point. It was painful, yes, but it pushed me to fight for myself and to demand better. It pushed us both to confront the damage and to find a way forward. Our journey isn't finished, and maybe it never will be. But we've taken the first steps toward something real. A relationship built on honesty, respect, and the hope that love can heal even the deepest wounds. The journey toward healing my relationship with my mom was far from linear. Some days were filled with hope and progress, and others brought back the old wounds, reminding me of how fragile trust could be. But through it all, I learned the importance of patience, not just with my mom, but with myself. One particular afternoon stands out in my mind. We had planned a small family gathering at my house, a tentative step toward rebuilding what had been broken. I was nervous, unsure how my mom would behave or whether old resentments would flare up. but I wanted to give this a real chance. As guests arrived and laughter filled the room, I caught my mom's eye across the kitchen. For a moment, I saw a softness there that I hadn't seen in a long time. She approached me quietly, took my hand, and said, "Thank you, Martha, for not giving up on me." It was simple, but it felt like a breakthrough, a sign that maybe the years of hurt didn't have to define us forever. Still, rebuilding trust meant facing uncomfortable truths. We began to open up about our past, the mistakes, the misunderstandings, the unmet expectations that had fueled years of tension. I told her about the nights I cried alone, feeling like I wasn't good enough. She shared her fears of failure and the pressure she felt to be the perfect mom, even when she didn't know how. These conversations weren't easy. Sometimes we argued, hurt each other's feelings, and questioned whether this was all worth it. But after every disagreement, we made a choice to try again, to listen more, and to be kinder. One of the most profound changes came when my mom started attending therapy. She told me it helped her understand her own behavior and gave her tools to express love without judgment. Seeing her work on herself inspired me. It reminded me that change is possible, even when it feels impossible. Therapy also gave us a common language to communicate better. Instead of old patterns of criticism and defensiveness, we learned to talk openly about our feelings. I could say when something hurt me without fearing she'd get angry, and she could share her struggles without shutting down. Meanwhile, I continued to build my own life with Daniel. Our relationship flourished as I grew stronger and more confident. Daniel's unwavering support was a constant reminder that love is built on respect and kindness. He celebrated my victories and helped me heal from the wounds my mom's words had left behind. We began creating new memories as a family. Simple moments like cooking dinner together, celebrating birthdays without tension, and sharing quiet talks about the future. These small acts of connection gradually replaced the distance and resentment that had once dominated our lives. Yet I never forgot the power of that moment at my wedding, the day I finally stood up to my mom's cruelty. It was painful, yes, but it was also liberating. It marked the start of my journey toward self-respect and healing. I realized that standing up to someone you love isn't about breaking them down. It's about demanding the respect and love you deserve. It's about setting boundaries so that relationships can grow healthier. To those watching this, struggling with toxic family dynamics, I want to say, you're not alone. It's okay to fight for yourself. It's okay to demand respect. And it's okay to seek help and support. Healing takes time, and it's rarely perfect. But if you keep pushing forward, keep communicating honestly, and hold on to hope, change can happen. My mom's regret was real. Her journey was hard, and mine is ongoing. But we're walking it together now, one step at a time. And for the first time in years, I believe that love can heal even the deepest wounds. Healing a broken relationship, especially one with your own mother, is rarely a smooth or easy journey. Even after months of effort, I quickly discovered how complex and layered our bond was, and how much work it took from both of us to rebuild what was almost lost. One of the most challenging parts was learning to forgive, not just my mom, but myself. For years, I had blamed myself for the distance between us, believing that if only I were better, things would be different. I'd tried so hard to earn her love and approval, to be the perfect daughter, but it was never enough. And when she insulted me on my wedding day, it was like every bit of that rejection exploded all at once. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the pain never happened. It means acknowledging the hurt, accepting that people are imperfect, and choosing to let go of the bitterness that can consume you. I realized I had to forgive myself for carrying that guilt for so long. And to do that, I needed to fully understand my worth, independent of anyone's approval. Therapy was a huge part of that process. Sitting in that therapist's chair, I finally allowed myself to feel the emotions I'd buried for years: anger, sadness, betrayal. I learned to recognize the toxic patterns that had shaped my relationship with my mom and how those patterns affected my sense of self. Therapy wasn't a magic fix, but it gave me tools to set boundaries, communicate better, and rebuild my self esteem. Meanwhile, my mom was on her own journey. I remember the first time she admitted she needed help. It was quiet, almost whispered, but it was a turning point. She started seeing a counselor who specialized in family dynamics, someone who helped her confront her own fears and insecurities that had fueled years of harshness and control. She told me later that it was terrifying to face those parts of herself, but also freeing. We both began to realize that our relationship wasn't just about us. It was about breaking cycles, generations of unresolved pain, unmet expectations, and silent suffering had passed down, and it was up to us to change the narrative. That realization brought a new kind of purpose to our efforts. Rebuilding trust required more than words. It demanded consistent action. My mom began showing up differently. Small things like remembering to ask how my day went, offering genuine compliments, and listening without judgment. She didn't always get it right, and sometimes old habits resurfaced, but she kept trying. And I responded by letting my guard down just a little more each time. At the same time, I was learning to take care of myself better. I surrounded myself with friends who lifted me up, pursued passions that made me feel alive, and created a home with Daniel filled with love and respect. I realized that healing wasn't just about fixing one relationship. It was about cultivating a life where I felt valued and whole. There were moments when I still struggled. Sometimes old doubts crept in. Does she really love me? Will this ever be okay? But each time I reminded myself how far I'd come. The fact that my mom and I were still talking, still trying, was a testament to our resilience. One particularly memorable moment was when we went away together for a weekend retreat, a chance to reconnect without the distractions of everyday life. It wasn't all sunshine. We had difficult conversations, tears, and even a few heated disagreements. But it was real. For the first time, I felt like we were building a relationship rooted in honesty, not fear. That weekend ended with us sitting by a campfire, sharing stories and dreams. My mom looked at me and said, "I never thought we'd get here, Martha. I'm proud of you, and I'm grateful you didn't give up on me." Hearing those words broke something open inside me. Years of pain melting into hope. Through this journey, I learned some valuable lessons. Standing up for yourself is an act of love, not just for you, but for those around you. It's a way to demand the respect you deserve and set the tone for healthier relationships. Healing takes time and requires patience. Progress isn't always linear, and setbacks are part of the process. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from the grip of past hurts so you can move forward with strength and grace. True change comes from within. You can't force someone to change, but you can create space for growth by holding firm boundaries and showing compassion. Support matters. Whether it's a partner, friends, or a therapist, having people who believe in you makes all the difference. Today, my relationship with my mom is far from perfect, but it's stronger and more honest than it's ever been. We continue to work on understanding each other, healing old wounds, and celebrating the good moments. I've found peace in knowing that while I can't change the past, I have the power to shape my future. To anyone watching this who might be struggling with toxic family dynamics, know that you are not alone. It's okay to fight for your worth. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to seek help and prioritize your happiness. Remember, sometimes the toughest battles lead to the most meaningful growth. And sometimes, standing up for yourself is the bravest and most loving thing you can do.